All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what appears to be the first actual video that I'm doing in regards with airsoft and airsoft maintenance, airsoft repairs. Um, so this is the first video. I thought I may as well do a tutorial on how to maintenance your gas pistols, um, since quite a lot of people who buy pistols, they look at the manual and they don't see what they're actually meant to do and stuff. But I thought today I would actually go ahead and show you guys how to generally maintenance your weapons, and just get all of the life out of your gun. Make sure that it runs for a long time, make sure it's well maintained, and make sure that it performs well. Those are the key things when it comes to airsoft. So we're going to be going ahead and actually maintaining, sorry, my personal build, which is a modified Glock 17 Gen 3 gas blowback semi-automatic WE EU pistol. So this is a pistol that I picked up about a month ago or so. I've barely had any issues with it, but I do need to maintenance it because I do plan to use it within the next 3 or so weeks, with the upcoming new rifle that I am purchasing, which is the G&G Armament Combat Machine, um, which I've been wanting to get for quite a while. Anyways, enough about that. So, as I said before, this is a Gen 3 Glock 17. This is not the C edition. The C edition, for anyone wondering, has the ability to do full auto. I didn't need that, so I went ahead and just got bog standard Glock. I've always loved the Glock series, and my decision for buying this gun specifically was I used a Glock at a field. Um, Absolutely loved it. Now, officially licensed Glock airsoft guns are very expensive. We are talking $400. This is a replica made by WE, and I decided to get it because I absolutely love the Glock. It's fantastic. It's great for close quarters. And, in those close quarter battles, you always want something you can pull out quickly and you can just use. It doesn't require a motor spinning up, doesn't require, you pulling back on a spring. It's just, it goes. So, as I said, that's the box. So, in here, you're going to see a couple things a little bit different. This is how it would come. It would also come with some packaging over the gun and the magazine. But obviously, since I've already unboxed it, you know, it's not going to be there. There's also some stuff about the manual and a QR code you can scan to check how to use your gun. The one thing I don't like about WE, in my personal opinion, is just their website. It's not amazing, especially when you're looking for the actual manual on your gun, because they don't provide paper copies. The only thing is some safety warnings, but they don't provide the actual paper copies, and you need to scan a QR code, which doesn't actually work at the moment. So hopefully WE goes ahead and actually fixes that, because that would be fantastic for them to fix. Um, and yeah, but since that's the case, I'm going to be playing in the next 3 weeks or so, so I thought I'd do some maintenance today while I have a little bit of free time. So, obviously, in the box, I've already told you, is going to be some safety stuff, and this is all going to be in packaging. You're going to get the gun fully assembled. So this is the Glock 17. Now you're going to notice mine looks a little bit different. The first thing is it is worn in, because I have used this, and because this is a moving part. Um, and you're going to notice the entire slide is silver. So the story behind that is because I don't have a UCARA license, which is the license that you need to buy black replica airsoft guns. So the color specifically across the board is black. And the only way that you can actually get these straight from the shop is you need to have a UCARA license, which requires you to have played at a field 3 times in the past 46 days, if I remember correctly, and requires you to also be 18, have some kind of ID. Of course, I am not 18. I'm turning 17 this year, and I'm nowhere close. I have the requirements from playing in the field, but I don't have the requirements in regards to age. So yeah. So I got this in blue. I sanded it all off. I had spray paint, which is legal, by the way. You are allowed to spray paint your guns, so it's not illegal. And um, one of the things is I basically sanded the whole thing down. So I completely sanded it. I took it apart. I sanded the entire slide inside out and went ahead and spray painted. The problem was I don't know what specific coating they use on this, but this paint would not stick properly. Now I've spray painted things before and it just wouldn't stick properly, so I said screw this, I'm gonna resand all of it and just go ahead and run it in silver, which looks fantastic. I mean, I would love if the top was maybe just full black because that would look absolutely awesome. But of course, we can't always get what we want. All right, so let me take you around this weapon before we go ahead and have a look at the insides and of course doing our maintenance. So of course, as already mentioned, this is a WE Tactical Glock 17. This shoots using green gas. You can use CO2, but it is per standard green gas, using, of course, the magazine that's provided. Now, in the box, you are going to get one magazine, which looks like this. So, as you can see, there is your gas valve. The top, that little hole, is also where the gas is expelled. And at the bottom is your gas hold, or where you actually go ahead and fill the gas in. And then, of course, you have where your BBs go. I believe this one can take, Jesus, is it 28 bullets? I believe it's 28 that you can fill this up with. Now, one thing I do not like about pistols at all is the loading. Now, let me get a rifle mag just to show this to you. So this is a rifle mag. This is a Stan G mag from Nurprol. And these are really easy to load because if you have a speed loader, you're just going to place the top on here, push it down, and you can start firing as many BBs through this thing as you want, and it loads quickly. You can have a mag loaded within maybe 15-20 seconds, and these usually hold about 300 bullets. Problem with these is because they have this little, where you're going to roll the BBs in, you have to do this by hand, unless I haven't found a loader that would allow me to load this easily. It all has to be done by hand. I know that there are loaders, I believe, that do exist, but I haven't been able to find any ones that are very reliable. So when loading this, you literally need to get your nail, pull that spring all the way down, ow, and yeah, you can go ahead and pop your BBs in. It's a very painful process loading these at games, but they are a ton of fun. So yeah, but we're gonna take you around the mag later. That's for later. So the features on this bad boy, well, of course, we have the moving slide. So this will move back and forth every single time you fire. And you're going to notice now, actually, the slide is locked. So this is one of the very cool things I love about gas blowback guns and replica gas blowback guns. They have this, so there is a spring inside that is going to push this back and forth every time you fire, right? Every single time you fire, this slide is going to go all the way back and forward. And it will actually go ahead and load another BB in. I'll try and demonstrate it a little bit without actually loading BBs in. Just to clarify, the magazine has no BBs. The barrel has had no BBs put in, and there is no gas in this mag. The gas is held in the mag. Just to prove this, I am pushing down on the valve right now. If there was gas in this, there would be gas flying out, and you would be able to visibly see it on screen. So, when you go ahead and load your mag in, usually on normal airsoft guns like AEGs, you don't need to cock anything back, usually, right? You don't need to cock the slide back. And I can actually show you as an example my old assault rifle here. Now, this is a Bulldog M4A1 short barrel, but obviously if I actually load this in, if I actually load a magazine in, I don't need to go ahead and pull the bolt back. I can't really show you the bolt because the gun is so damn big, but I don't need to pull this back because all this is actually giving me access to is the hop-up. Now, when I get my G&G Armament combat machine, I will be going ahead and obviously making a video about it and whatnot because that is a much more advanced rifle for regular skirmish players. But for now, that's just kind of the example. So, as we said, this will go back and forth. Now, how it actually gets, the ability to be able to move back and forth, as shown, is there is a spring at the front here. So if you actually look down the barrel, and it is also a threaded barrel, I'm pretty sure it's a female to male barrel. So female going into the male barrel, but it might be the other way around. they don't show much documentation on their actual website, and I've looked at videos and people say that, oh, one's female, one's male, so I don't know anymore. I haven't actually put anything on, but I am planning to potentially put a tracer unit on this, which would be really cool because this thing does shoot very fast. So at the front here, you're going to see this little dimple. When you actually pull it back, you'll notice that dimple is still sticking out. That's because there is a spring. Now you're going to probably notice every time I'm pulling it back, it's actually locking, and that's not a feature. That is because I have not maintenance this gun since my last game, and there is probably barely any lubricant, which is why it's getting stuck. That's why we're going to do a maintenance video today. So we've got our slide. It has obviously the lovely, tells you the name of the version of the Glock, tells you it's tactical, and tells you that apparently it uses 9x19. Obviously, it doesn't use 9x19. This is an airsoft replica. I'm not showing a real gun, don't worry. Now, it uses aim point sights, if I can get it into the camera so you can see. Aim point sights, they're a little bit damaged from my usage, but, we're going to maintenance this today. Maybe I'll even try and actually clean the front sight because I haven't actually tried yet. So yeah, we have our dust cover here, which obviously gets removed every time the slide goes back and forth. As you can see again, sticky slide, which is why I'm going to maintenance it. We have actually got, so on the side of the gun here, you are going to see these. On both sides of the gun, there are these little dimples. And essentially, what these serve as a purpose is, number one, to stop the bolt from flying forward every time the spring is activated, and number two is actually to be able to release the bolt. So what I like to do when releasing the bolt is go ahead and lock it up using the slide catch. This will actually activate when your gun is empty. So if you try to fire with gas in, nothing in the chamber, it'll pull back, your catch will activate, and hey presto, yeah, your gun's telling you you're out. And obviously you push it down, that releases it and goes flying forward. So another thing is the trigger. Now, this is a very, very interesting trigger. Now, we do have actually a safety on this. So this is basically what we call a fail-safe safety. So if I actually push this forward, you're going to hear a little click. And what this allows me to do is actually move the trigger. Now, it's obviously not going to fire because there's no mag in it and I'm not actually fully completing the cycle, but this is a hard safety. So if this is activated in the forward position, which is this way for me, then the trigger will be able to move. But if it's activated in the backwards position, this trigger will not move. It doesn't matter even if I'm pressing the safety trigger, which is in the middle, which I'll show you in a minute, it isn't going to move. Doesn't matter even if there's, gas in it, loaded, whatever, it's not going to move. And that's just basically the hard safety. Now, I'll show you how that works in a little bit, but let me show you this cool feature. So, this gun has what's called a trigger safety. Now, there is a little dimple in the middle here, which is like a second trigger. If that isn't pushed back when you are trying to put, so you see now I am trying to put pressure, and you'll see that it's not sliding. It's not pushing back. Nothing is working. The second that's pushed down, it allows me to move it. And this is basically just another point so that your gun, if you accidentally like fall over or whatever, let's say you drop your gun, your trigger's not going to go backwards and start firing because you need to actually have proper grip on it. And of course, as I said, we have our slide catch. So if you're out of bullets, when the slide goes back, this will go up. And actually, when you put a mag in, I'll show you this. When you put a magazine in, I don't know if I can actually get it slow enough, if I do it slow enough, but you should notice the little catch goes up. You see? See that little movement? So that basically tells the gun, or actually activates this, so that if I try to fire, as you can see, just to replicate as though I was firing, it locks it back to tell me there's no bullets. As so. Alright, so demonstrate all of that. Obviously we have our mag release, so this is just a little button that when a mag is in, if I press that, magazine comes sliding out. And that's just a little piece of, I believe, polymer that is literally holding the mag in place. Now this gun is mainly constructed out of polymer. It's mainly a polymer with obviously the slide and a few internals being metal. This is more to just reduce the weight and also because a full metal gun is going to be very heavy. Even real Glocks use a lot of polymer because there's not really a need And obviously it's quite high grade polymer, so yeah. Another thing is there's actually one rail. Yeah. Now, unfortunately, this is not a standard sized rail. You can't just start slapping like grips on it and stuff unless you have the correct adapters. So it just has a singular rail. I believe you can put flashlights on this. I'm pretty sure you can. I unfortunately don't rock a flashlight because I don't play night games at the moment, but with winter coming up, of course, night games are definitely a possibility, which would be fantastic. However, with winter, this is one thing that is terrible about gas guns. Now, if you're running CO2, you don't need to worry about this, but there is something called the cooldown effect. Now, I'm not going to fire this in my room. Number one, because I don't actually have a lot of gas on hand, and it's quite expensive stuff. It's about £14 a bottle, which is certainly expensive. But the other thing is also that so the gas in the can is liquid. So when you fill it, I can show you an example, I believe. Let me just go ahead and get a gas canister. So this is what it would usually come in. I use Neuroprol 2.0, and you just take your little needle here, give it a little shake, and then just push down, and it will start to fill. Now, this is an empty one because in my last game I used about a bottle and a half, but that's because I was kind of being trigger happy. It was like my second time using the gun, so you know. But yeah, so because it gets stored in liquid there, when it changes or gets changed into gas into this, the temperature goes down a lot. So if you physically hold your mag, you will notice a lot cooler because the conversion from liquid to gas. And in the winter, it absolutely sucks to use green gas because green gas is a lubricant as well as a gas. You essentially experience the cool down effect, which is where because every time gas is expelled, the gun is getting cold, the internals are getting cold, so the gas isn't expanding as much as it would want to. And so in return, your gun starts to freeze up, it becomes sluggish, you can't get through a full mag. You need a lot of pressure with green gas. Now, you can technically use CO2, but do not use CO2 in these mags. The reason being, CO2 runs at a different PSI to green gas. You can technically use it, but you won't be able to fill your mag fully, and not to mention, you will probably burst every valve on the gun. So please, for the love of God, if you're going to use CO2, at least convert it to a HPA, which I'm not going to do in this video, but an upcoming video for HPA conversion to a pistol, which I'm going to be doing with a buddy of mine who has bought a pistol, who's going to convert it to a HPA, which is a high pressured air pistol. So, for example, instead of it being these tiny mags, he's basically going to have a big bottle and like one of these mags that attach to it. I'm not even joking. There are actual conversions to do this. So, yeah, that might be a future video. But enough of that. So, yeah, that's one of the bigger disadvantages with green gas. It's fantastic because it lubricates your gun at the same time, but it can't really work. It doesn't, you're not going to use it in winter because you're going to get about 3 bullets before your gun just starts to completely, not want to fire off, or it will fire off but very slow FPS, or um, it will just release all the gas. So yeah, this is one of the things with the cooldown effect is if it happens to you, essentially you'll see your slide kind of locking up because it starts to freeze the internals, and if it locks here for too long, the hammer gets stuck, and whenever you fire it, there is a hammer inside. I'll actually go ahead and show you how this works if I can obviously take the slide off. All right. So at the bottom of here, you're going to see three different kind of hammers. And I can fire this because obviously there's nothing in it, but essentially this is the actual hammer. Now, when you experience the cooldown effect, the hammer kind of gets stuck because what happens is it fires, this goes down, which then releases gas temporarily. Now the problem is if your slide starts going half back, it gives it a little period of time where the gas can start to release, and essentially what happens is it's pressing on this valve. Now if you have gas in a mag like this and you press on this valve with your finger, you'll notice it's under very high tension. That is because if you press that, that's how gas gets released in a gun. So you press that, gas is going to go flying everywhere, okay? And you're going to experience it if you try to use this in the winter, especially. Anyways, let's get to it. So, I've obviously told you about the cooldown effect, potential videos, whatever. Let's continue. Alright, so let's have a look at the bottom part. So this is basically the pistol grip, the rail, the trigger, and you've got your hammer. Nothing too crazy. So, You're going to notice it might look a little bit shiny. That's just old residue. We're going to get rid of that today. But you've got your hammer here. So when I actually pull the trigger, you're going to see that hammer goes flying forward. And what this does is basically it presses that little valve release and releases some gas, which then goes down your barrel and pushes your BB at lovely speeds. You've then got a second buoy here. This is just a little peg that if you push down will actually reset your trigger. So this is the trigger reset. Now, you can push those two down and still fire. But why is there a third one here? What does this third one do? You know, why would there be three? What do they do? Well, we've already established what the other two do, but this third one actually does something very important. This number one basically is a way of the gun knowing that you've actually fired a round off and that it has successfully cycled. Because if this stays up when your slide after you fire, it will not allow the slide to push back. It will either lock in place, or what will happen is when your slide goes over, it pushes it down, locks it back into place. That essentially lets the gun know that, hey, we've managed to chamber another round, we're all good to go for a fire again. Now, when the slide goes back, all of these get pushed down. So that's how it kind of resets itself. And then, of course, the slide comes forward. And yeah, this will release gas from the canister in your magazine via the valve. This is your trigger reset. And of course, this actually also activates the hammer. And this is basically a hardware way of, knowing whether or not you're out of bullets. So if you're out of bullets, if we actually have a look at the slide here, you'll see there's nothing actually physically stopping it except this tiny little bit of metal. And essentially, if you run out of bullets, it will realize. I don't remember the specific. I can't actually, unfortunately, show you this part and explain it until I dismantle it. But yeah, so if there's no bullets, this will go up. It will stop your slide from coming forward, and obviously, it will lock it using the catch. And then, of course, if you go ahead and reload a mag, you can release your catch. It will push that down forcefully, and it's kind of an override. So that's basically the bottom. We obviously have our mag release, or where our magazine gets sat in. Sorry. So the actual button, I can't really show you because of the lighting, but all this essentially does is it just moves a piece of polymer that locks it in place out of the way, allowing it to slide free. We have our spring for our trigger, and then we have the metal barrier, I like to call. I don't actually know the proper name, unfortunately, because there isn't really a proper name. All this is this tiny piece of metal that I'm pointing at right now. That is what you use to actually disengage the slide to allow it to come off the rail. Now, also you need this because if you don't have that and the gun flies, the slide flies forward, you are going to experience your slide flying off. So that's another thing. Also the safety. So obviously I showed you that little metal slide, and if we actually push it forward, where is it now? Okay, so it's at the back, is it the forward position? So, because this flipping, I forgot to slot the hammer back down. So when you push this forward, it basically pushes a piece of metal that goes over the mechanism for the actual trigger, which is how it prevents it from firing, obviously. And that's kind of just your hardware, you're not going to be able to fire with that there, but once you obviously go ahead and push it into the forward position, it allows that trigger to cycle because there's a little hammer here, if I can actually point at it, there's a little hammer in there that has to push down all the way in order for the trigger to fully cycle. And when you slide this forward, your safety forward, there's a piece of metal that essentially slides into the place where the hammer would normally push in and stops you from firing. Now, obviously, I can't completely dismantle this because these parts don't need to be dismantled, and I say this to everyone whenever they're working on their guns. Dismantle the least that you have to. You don't want to dismantle everything because if you muck up on one part or lose one tiny part, then it's the end. You're going to find it very painful to either have to go and buy a new part, or you're also going to have to try and find the part. It becomes frustrating, and the best thing is not to dismantle everything, especially the hammer mechanism. This is one thing I never like to touch because modifying this is quite dangerous. You can make your gun a lot more powerful than it's meant to be, which can obviously get you into a lot of legal trouble at airsoft fields, but can also physically injure someone badly, i.e. cheating. And also the safety mechanism, I'm not going to touch that because that is covered under warranty, and I still do have warranty on for the pistol grip, the trigger, and the bottom half. I don't have any warranty on the top because obviously I've modified this. But yeah, so that's pretty much the bottom, nice and clean, and yeah. So we're going to do the slide after I did the magazine, because I kind of do want to just talk about the magazine and some features of it. So this is a WE Glock 17 magazine. We obviously have our bullet holes here, so this is where your BBs are going to go, and it just uses a little spring like any normal mag would. Usually, some of them are wind up, some of them are, yeah, God knows. There's some different ones. We have our valve at the back here, so this is obviously what gets pressed to release the gas and whatnot. And if you have a full mag and you press this down, it will release the gas. You may need to do this sometimes just for maintenance if there's like an air pocket inside of your canister. And yeah. Now, one thing to say, these magazines are very expensive. They are very, 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 very expensive. My Stanan mags here, right? These only use a spring and they are made of actual steel. This is steel, apart from certain parts on it. And that cost me about £11 per mag, right? And I run 4 mags. This is a singular mag that can hold about 20 something rounds, depending on how you kind of pack them in because it's annoying to load these. And these cost almost £30. I got this for 29.99. Yeah, £30. And that's only for the standard ones. If you want to get an extended one, it goes insane. You're talking 50, $60. And this is one of the things that sucks about gas blowback. They're absolutely awesome. But if you go for like an M4 or an SMG, their mags get expensive. Bigger canisters, bigger magazines, springs need to be stronger. The valve rings, which are the rings that actually hold the air in, need to be tighter because there's more gas. And yeah. So yeah, a couple things you might run into issues is don't try not to drop these, please. Like you can drop these mags because there's nothing actually really in them apart from a spring that isn't going to drop out of anywhere. These though are very delicate because they have O-rings for the gas, which holds the gas in, and any little nudge, any little drop, can seriously damage them, and it's a pain in the ass to repair these, let alone replace them. Like this one, if I broke it, I will replace because it's £10. This one, if I broke it, I would try everything to repair myself because I do not want to spend another $30 on it. Finally, we obviously have our little plastic shield, which essentially when you load in, kind of acts as part of your grip and just lets you know it's all the way in. You don't have to have these on, and especially if you're doing HPA setups, if you intend to maybe need to quickly switch to a gas blowback mag, you're not going to have them on because you can't. And yeah, you got your little mag weld here, or mag weld, excuse me, that is the wrong terminology by far. Mag weld's actually this part of the gun, or where the bullets go in. You got your gas relief valve, which is actually where the gas comes out, and obviously you have another valve here. But all this does is basically just open the valve up. So this is, yeah. Finally, on the bottom we have where you fill your gas in, usually in big canisters. But you basically just shake the bottle, stick the needle in, let it fill up. You'll know when it's filled up. Trust me, you will know. And there you go. That's the mag. All right, time to move on to the painful parts because maintaining pistols is not fun, to say the least. So we're going to be maintaining specifically the slide, as this is one of the most complex pieces of gear in regards to this. So tools, I'm going to be using a tool set here. This is just a basic screwdriver set. You don't really need much more. Get some silicone grease, and one of the absolute weirdest things is a sock. The reason I say this is for cleaning grease off. Don't do it with paper towels because you are going to get so much of tissue paper everywhere. Trust me. All right, so we're going to go ahead and actually dismantle this. So I'm going to be using a normal, I believe this is a, let me just check here if I can see in the light. This is a PH2 Phillips head screwdriver, and I'm going to go ahead and get my silicone lube out. So yeah, one big thing, if you're lubricating these guns, please make sure you use the correct lubrication, as normal lubrication like WD-40 is going to absolutely ruin your gun because you have plastic parts in here, and certain lubricants are going to eat away at that plastic. So there's a couple things that we can obviously take away from this, and I can actually show you right now. So of course we have our spring here. So this is actually what gives you that moving slide and that feeling of recoil. Now I've actually placed an aftermarket spring on this. This is a 1 point, what did I say? I'm so stupid. Either 1.5 or 1.7 spring. Which is much more powerful. You can get like 2.5s, but they're just ridiculous. And I believe this one comes stock with a 1.3. But I wanted a little bit more oomph when I tried it, so I went to my store and I got myself one of these. Now, obviously, this needs to be lubricated. You can see it's going to get all over my hands. I'm not really bothered if it gets on my mouse pad or my hands, whatever. Don't worry. So the next things are hop up. Now, if you don't know what a hop up does, you see the little dial. If my camera will focus, you'll see a little dial there. This essentially you use to zero your gun, which is basically making sure it fires straight. If your gun shoots too low, then you turn the wheel so that it goes up, and if your gun is shooting too high, you turn the wheel so it goes down. Now, it's a little bit annoying with pistols because it's not like my AR, for example, where I can literally um, what do you call it? I can literally pull the slide back and it's there and I can change it in real time. This one, if there is a problem, you need to take the entire slide off. You need to take a mag out, you need to adjust it, put the slide back on, put a mag back on, test it again. So yeah, it is very painful. And it can vary. Sometimes you need to recenter them, but yeah. So obviously we have our barrel, which is in here. This is the golden bit that you can see, the tiny little bit of golden, but don't worry, you'll be able to actually properly see that. And of course the kind of shielding around. So there's your hop up and there's your barrel. And is it threaded or not? Am I stupid? It looks like it's been threaded. I don't know what happened. Yeah, no, it is threaded. What am I on about? So yeah, this is just a shielding just for the moving parts so that your barrel isn't just completely flying about. This just holds everything in place. And yeah. So, as you can see, we're getting a little less complicated here. Now, you can actually remove the sights completely on both. There is a front and back sight, as previously mentioned. Obviously, we have our gas valve. This is basically where the gas from the magazine hops in, gets shot out of here, and then into your barrel, pushing that BB. Now, to take this part out is a little bit trickier. You need to get your screwdriver here. Did I get too big of a bit for this? I did. My apologies. Let me go ahead and change that out for a slightly smaller bit. That works. All right. And we're just going to go ahead and obviously take that off. So I like to just unscrew that until it's just jumping about a little bit. And I'm not even going to take the screw out because it's vital that you keep every part reasonably together, because it absolutely sucks to muck about with these. As you can see, that whole part just comes out and we've got this little piece on the slide. That is actually important, believe it or not. And there you go, you can see it's a bit crappy in there with my paint job, but again, sanding the inside I am too lazy to do. So, obviously, we've got our slide here. This is an absolute bare bones slide. The only thing I can take off is the sights, but I'm not going to because there's not a need. So this is one of the most important pieces of your gas blowback. Of course, I'm going to take the little buttstock off here. So this is basically not only a part of your gun's blowback feature or your recoil, but also is what is actually directing gas in. So if I show you a magazine again, you'll notice that the hole here is exactly the same size as this one, and this is because this is where the gas goes in. And when you fire, or sorry, when you load, this gets pulled forward, pulled back, and then when you fire, gas goes through and goes boom, and then back. And that's how you get your gas blowback feature, and also the gas comes through. So dismantling this one is a little bit more annoying. I'm going to actually get the screw out and make sure I put it in a safe place. So obviously there's a little spring on the bottom here. This is the bottom part. Now you can put 2 springs in. I didn't put 2 springs in because with a 1.7 spring, it is way too powerful. So no. And obviously you can go ahead and pull this all the way out. Then you just wiggle it about a bit, and then you pull it that way, and boom. So this, yeah, this is a very, very annoying piece of the gun. You know, one thing is this. Why the fuck is this loose? Okay. Yeah, so this is basically the contraption that is preventing your gun from blowing up. The reason this is made out of pure metal is because this is handling very high pressures. So it needs to be able to withstand that. And you can actually see just how damaging, you know, gas blowback is. This is one of the big things about gas blowback and why you need to lubricate, because it will absolutely shred your gun. If you ever see someone with a fully painted, nice looking gas blowback, it's a new gun. You are never going to see a gas blowback that has no wear and tear on it, because it's just inevitable. It's going to happen. So we have our little nozzle here, and I'm basically going to show you what I'm going to do. So I get my sock. I haven't worn this. This is just a clean sock, preferably white, if you will. But just go ahead and start rubbing off all of the lubricant. Now, one thing I am not going to actually clean is the inside of the barrel and the inside of the nozzle. And the reasoning being is I don't have enough green gas to run the gun and lubricate the insides. So we're not going to do that. Instead, we're just going to be doing the parts that actually act as a slide. So get your silicone lube and just, you know, give it a quick spray like that, and that will lubricate the sliding areas. I like to be an idiot and just, yeah, kind of over lube. But the reason I over lube is because I feel like I haven't put enough on, so, you know, don't shout at me. Also do the bottom, because there is a spring on the bottom, as I showed earlier, this tiny spring, which actually is, you don't need it, but for the love of God, use it, because you will thank me later. And yeah, so we're going to work from the bottom to the top. So I'm going to be doing the most basic parts, and then I'm going to be doing the much harder parts. So you're going to go ahead and take your nozzle again. Now, I actually like to lube just the outside a teensy bit. Give that a nice rub in, because these parts do move. This plastic is rubbing against metal. So be wary. Now, how you put this back in is very simple. You see those 2 little feet? See those 2 tiny little feet? You're going to go ahead and put your nozzle like this, and then push. You're going to feel a tiny bit of resistance, but it should pop in. And then you're going to see it goes in. Look at that. You know, use a little bit of muscle. But you'll see now it's free moving. Now, you can run without a spring, but the reason I recommend not to is because you are relying now on the slide to actually reset this. And if it doesn't get reset properly, you're going to have issues. So just, you know, keep the stock spring. Don't put, you know, extra springs is more for liability sake, but bear in mind your gun is going to become uncontrollable when you are spamming. So yeah. So little spring here. This is a very, very annoying little spring because it likes to pop out at every single opportunity. Put it on the left side to you. Don't put it on the right side because there's a little notch. If you want to put 2 springs, you need to take this little plastic notch off because it will not, for the love of God, sit there. That was way too much lubricant. You didn't see that. Lube that up a little bit because that spring is going to be compressing. It's going to be grinding against metal. It's going to be pushing on that plastic. Lubricate it. All right, so you've pretty much got yourself a nice lubricated area. Now, one thing, the inside of barrels and the inside of the gas nozzle, please do not lubricate them with silicone lube. Just run green gas through it. Green gas is designed specifically for the inside of barrels. Silicone lube, technically speaking, should work, but I don't recommend it. So yeah. So we're actually going to rebuild this bit by bit. So with this part, first thing, get this stupid piece of plastic back in. This actually goes on this slide here. It just goes in this little corner here, like so. Just push it in, make sure it's all nice. It's going to fall out because obviously there's nothing stopping it from falling out, which is why we need it in. But you'll see it just goes there. It's really just a showpiece. But if you don't have it for some reason, your gun won't work, which is really bloody annoying. All right, so you've got your spring in, all that good stuff. What I like to do is actually just completely build it back up. So even the little stopper on the back, just go ahead and pop that bad boy back on. And now for the really annoying part, putting it back in without getting the spring to drop. Now this is one problem that I have faced multiple times with this spring, which is that it tends to pop out when you are putting it back in. Very, very annoying, and I absolutely hate you ever made that, because there's not actually a way to secure it, so you have to be so careful putting it in. You have to slide it about a bit, you know, and then hopefully it clicks at some point. Don't drop it down, just slide it all the way in. And do you know how you know if your spring stayed there? Because this will actually pop back in. This will actually start sliding back and forth and having resistance. Key thing. Now, one thing to note is that when you take this screw out at the back, it also can dislodge your rear sight. So be careful. Please be careful. I've also just made a boo-boo. This is one thing that I 100% have seen so many people do. I still do it to this day, even though I've worked on quite a few airsoft guns in my time, which is basically what I like to call not lubing the inside of your slide. So you actually don't realize this, but that spring at the bottom is going to genuinely start having, it's going to start grinding against the metal on the bottom of your slide. So advisory, put some lubricant there. I've definitely put way too much, but I'm going to let it bleed out a little bit. Hold on. What the fuck? Oh, can you? Thank you. All right, we'll let that bled out a little bit. That looks better. Okay, attempt number 2. Just going to go ahead and place that down and quickly pop this part back in. Yeah, one thing, don't expect to have clean hands after this. There is going to be grease all over you. And you need to do this when you get a brand new gas blowback gun. Even if it's a CO2 powered gun, you need to lubricate it, because CO2 especially, there is no lubricating factor. There is nothing actually actively lubricating your gun. So please, for the love of God, lubricate it, because you're going to use that gun for about 5 minutes and you're going to quickly start hearing problems with it. So please, lubricate your guns. So obviously I've gotten all the parts in. My spring is definitely still working, so we're just going to go ahead. I believe I got all the I got all the parts in. And pop that screw back in. Now, a reminder, if you forget this screw, technically speaking, your gun will work, but just bear in mind it's going to be moving around a lot in there, and that is going to damage your gun even further. Right, so we've got that first part in. Hey presto, let's give the front a little bit of lube. I know I'm putting quite a lot, but bear in mind that all that lubricant has dried out since I last used it, so yeah. So we got the barrel here with the hop up. And I'm not going to spray anything down the barrel. I'm just going to spray on the metal barrel, like so, because this is going to move against that metal sheath. So, maybe even do the hop up a little bit, because it can, from time to time, it might get a little bit, not wanting to move about. Now, with this especially, you can actually tell where it needs lubricant because there is massive scratch marks on it. So, if you see those scratch marks, slap a little bit of lubricant on there. It's not going to hurt anyone. This part especially, like, you could dip this in lubricant and nobody's going to scream at you. It's not going to destroy the performance of your weapon because, well, this part is going to be constantly grinding against metal. So what you do then, go ahead and take your barrel, shove the hop up back in. You need to give it a little push and just get it in place. And then you're literally going to just do this. Pop your barrel in. Give the little area a little spray. Don't spray the nozzle. And there you go. That pretty much sorts that part. Now, what's the final part? The spring. This one, just douse it in flipping lubricant. I know that sounds so stupid considering it's a spring, But bear in mind that I've had times when I use this on the field where I didn't lubricate this and started hearing a horrible screeching sound every time my gun went forward and backwards. And this is because the spring was essentially starting to grind against metal. And that's primarily my fault why that happened. But it is my fault. I don't know why I'm saying primarily when it is. So what I like to do, go ahead and push the spring proper in. Now this is one crucial part that I didn't do last time. Where the spring actually sits, place some lubricant because you're going to have this horrible screeching sound again. And especially on the front as well. This is a big thing. Just place some dollops in the actual cracks because you have to remember these are moving parts, metal against metal. What happens if you don't lubricate that? I don't know. Gee, sparks. This is one of the big things. Please lubricate your guns. I'm going to say this so much now because you have to bear in mind that the gases that we use, apart from I believe CO2, are flammable. So for example, if I run green gas and then just decide to put, a straight up lighter at the front, it is going to ignite that gas. Also, lubricate your slide. Very important. So that's pretty much the gun done. I mean, I'll put a little bit extra just to be on the safe side. And, a little bit around here, I'd usually just use green gas, but nothing on the actual intake hole or the nozzle. And yeah, I can't breathe because there is so much fucking silicon lube in the air right now. All right, so the back part, or the bottom part, I call it the back part, but that's because I was looking here. Douse it. Just seriously douse it. I mean, I don't know why people, if you're going for things like Gen 4, 5, and 6, yes, you need to be very careful because there are certain parts that it's not going to work. But in the sake of the Gen 3, you could literally pour water on this and it will still work. Now, what do you do as your final bit? Go ahead, pop that slide on, give it a couple. Just pull it back a couple times. Let the lubricant all settle in. Oh, what the hell? Oh. Ah, I made a boo-boo. Again, because I am an idiot. So, what's the mistake I made? Very simple. I only lubricated the top of the slides. I completely forgot there are actually sides to the slides, like little indents, which is basically how the gun gets held together. I've also sprayed way too much silicone lube this time. Holy crap. Okay, I'm gonna need to clean my hands after this. There we go. Get the hammer to move a little bit. So, what do you do with all the excess? Well, number one, don't wash your hands yet. Just get a sock and rub it all off. I mean, if you really want to go ham, you can start dipping your flipping gun in water, because technically speaking, you can. But bear in mind, you are going to rub off a lot of lubricant, so please don't do that. I just like to take a sock, something with cloth, ideally. Just go around, give it a nice clean. It'll feel a little bit weird after, but you see now, it's not locking up. And if I even half cock it, it's not, it only locks up very rarely, but that's normal because I've half cocked it. But it was locking up even when I was just doing this. The biggest test is actually pull the trigger back and see if it locks up afterwards, because that's the hardest pull you're going to do. And obviously, oh, it works fine. Lock's working. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and pop the safety back on. And that is, yeah, that is essentially the Glock 17 Tactical. That's how you maintenance it. And that's how you do all that good stuff. One more thing to note, when you get your magazine, just place a small dollop of lubricant on the seals. This just ensures that, if there's any leaks, you're going to know, but also that they don't dry up and stop working. And that's it. That is the Glock 17 Tactical. Now, just some statistics in regards with this gun. It will shoot at 350 FPS with 0.2s, which is the highest that it's actually allowed, which is ridiculous. So, yeah, modifying this, please don't. The things that I've modified is just the spring That is because I wanted a more powerful spring, but that does not affect the FPS. But please don't modify these unless you know what you are doing. And remember, any modifications made to a weapon does void its warranty or certain parts of the warranty. With that being said, my name is David Brassis. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope it was helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll go ahead and try and respond to as many as possible. Um, have a good day. Subscribe to the channel and like this video. Make sure to turn on the notification bell to receive future content and updates from the channel. I wish you the best of your day. Goodbye.